So we've just witnessed a rather interesting race. Well, I couldn't call it an interesting race in the sense of on-field track action because, of course, there was a lot of overtaking, but very little else in terms of a fight in terms of the front of the grid. But the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix has just concluded, and we've got a race winner that would probably not surprise you if it was Sergio Perez. Why should that not surprise you? Because, well, in recent times, he's developed a bit of a reputation as being someone who's very, very good on street circuits. He's someone who, in fact, does tend to do well when it comes to the more non-conventional circuits. Street circuits, remember last year, he had a very good showing. He won in Monaco. He had a pretty good showing in Singapore, where he also won. He also took pole position last year in Saudi Arabia, the same place where we are racing today. Could have won the race, ended up not winning. In fact, it was Verstappen who won last year, but this time around, Sergio Perez takes the checkered flag as a race winner. Although, it must be noted that he won't, in fact, be leading the World Championship because in that last race, or in the last lap of the race, Verstappen, his teammate, ended up getting the fastest lap, and that means that Max Verstappen remains in front in the leadership race, albeit by just one single point. That being said, though, this does look like it's going to be another season of slog for any team that's not named Red Bull. Although Fernando Alonso in that Aston Martin certainly looked like he could have made things interesting if he could have, stuck to the lead a little longer. Unfortunately, very early on, he ended up getting a grid penalty. And so what happened there was that in the start, he wasn't quite inside his grid box. And the stewards noted that, gave him a 5-second time penalty. He served that time penalty during his pit stop. And he finishing third, obviously, in an Aston Martin, the second straight podium for Alonso and Aston Martin this season. Pretty good, but again, you're thinking what could have been. Maybe he could have been fighting for second, could very well have been fighting for the win, considering he took the lead from, Sergio Perez on the first lap of the race. He did, in fact, stay ahead for most of the time. There was a safety car, though, that played into Verstappen, into the hands of Red Bull and Sergio Perez, and even Verstappen to an extent, because Verstappen was already catching a lot of people. Remember, starting from P15 on the grid after not making it out of Q2 due to some mechanical issues in the car. Actually did pretty well to come back that far ahead, but he was never, by the time he did make it to the front, he was never going to catch his teammate Perez, and Perez takes the win. Now, talking about teams beyond, of course, Red Bull, the team that actually I think impressed the most were, of course, Mercedes, because this was supposed to be a track there where they would have struggled a tad, and there was one that was probably going to favor the Ferraris. However, the Ferraris only ended up finishing, if I'm not wrong, sixth and seventh. Yes, Carlos Sainz in sixth, Charles Leclerc in seventh. Whereas fourth place was taken by George Russell. He did have a bit of a run for a podium spot at the end because there was a belief that maybe Fernando Alonso would have in fact gotten another 5-second penalty because apparently there was some sort of an infringement while he was serving his first. That hasn't really happened as of now. And what is also worth noting is that despite that penalty not coming into play, fourth and fifth for Mercedes would have probably been a lot better than they were expecting. So that's good in terms of keeping them in the hunt, both in terms of the World Constructors Championship as well as, of course, maybe fighting for a few more podiums and wins once those car upgrades come their way. Beyond that, of course, the only other team that looked consistent in terms of point scoring, Alpine, both Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon in the points. Final points finish was, of course, taken by Kevin Magnussen, who got ahead. Yuki Tsunoda, very late in the race, ended up getting past him. Final championship point in a season that looks like it's going to be very tightly contested, especially in the midfield. Although we may even say only in the midfield, because Red Bulls, they do look like they're going to be a team in another class altogether. Of course, that is, discounting the fact that maybe another team might just get in a couple of upgrades that would actually reduce that gap. Right now, though, it does look like it's Red Bull fighting a lone battle up front, something that we had gotten rather used to seeing in the early days of the turbo hybrid era when Mercedes were, in fact, fighting for the championship themselves. You had Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg engaging in battles for, of course, the title. Not the best advert for the sport in that regard, but it is telling that so many of these cars seem to be competing against each other. Raceability is much better. So new regulations definitely getting, exactly what it is that they intended doing. And don't forget, it's only the second year. I'm sure you'll see a lot more close racing in the future. This race, though, not one that's going to go down in the history books, is probably one of the more thrilling. definitely had its moments. I personally enjoyed it. You guys can let me know if you enjoyed it in the comments below. And don't forget, for now, I'm taking you guys leave. But if you enjoyed it, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, tap the bell icon, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And don't forget to download the AajTak app as well. Lastly, if you're already on the channel, go ahead, check out some other videos that we may have done. For now, though, from my side, good night and goodbye.